Well, good evening. This is, I believe, session 5. I'm losing count, but as we continue on, we're continuing on in the book through the Bible in 1 year. And we left off last time in the book of Leviticus. We're getting ready to turn the corner. We just basically need to cover the festivals, the feasts, and look ahead into the book of Numbers, which will be good. But we had a question last time. Len asked a good question. And the question was this: what is the role of the high priest? What is the term of the high priest? And I have it on. It's not really specified in the Bible, but I looked up a couple of sources, and there seems to be consensus that originally it was to be a lifelong office. It would be the priest would be replaced when he's unable to do the office anymore, do the rigors of the worship and the structure there, but he would then pass it on to a proper son, if there was a proper son, and that would be determined. What's interesting, though, a verse that came to mind was when near Jesus' crucifixion, there's a prophecy made by Caiaphas that it's necessary that one die for the nation. And he didn't realize what he was prophesying, but he was prophesying for the Messiah to die for the nation. But if the words that I remember from that, and Caiaphas was the high priest that year. Now, some believe that was just, it could mean like at that time. When we look at history, Caiaphas was appointed high priest in the year AD 18, and he continued on until AD 36. His son-in-law had been, he was son-in-law to Annas, who was the high priest from 6 AD to 15 AD. However, if you know your New Testament, Annas was alive at the same time as Caiaphas, so it wasn't death until death do you part. And although at that time it's thought that whoever the Roman council was for Judea would pick who the high priest was, but regardless, it was nominally in the Old Testament times for life from a Jewish source that when, again, they were injured or unable to conduct the duties, they would replace his son or someone his equal to do that. All right.
Being facetious, a bit like the papal line.
What's that?
Being facetious, a bit like the Pope. The lifetime commitment.
Yes. And with all the coughing, I'm very sensitive to the Pope's plight right now. But, all right. Well, let us dive in here. So we're basically diving into the feast. We spoke about unleavened bread. Well, we had Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits. I think we talked about that.
Yeah.
So we left off at Pentecost. We'll find the description of Pentecost at Leviticus 23, 15 through 22. I'm not going to go there, but this feast occurred 50 days, hence the word Pentecost. It comes from the Greek word being 50th, after the feast of first fruits. And after Christ's resurrection, he was on the earth for 40 days. You can see that in the first part of the book of Acts. Before he ascended, and then the disciples waited until the Pentecost, until the Holy Spirit came down upon them. And that's when the church was born, although people will debate when the church was born. Some will say it's going to go up to the stoning of Stephen. Some will go back to when Christ breathed out his spirit upon the disciples. Somewhere in there, I'm a Pentecost guy myself, because that's when the church was empowered to do what it was going to do. Let's go to Acts chapter 2, verse 1.
And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place.
So they were in Jerusalem. They're meeting kind of in secret still, but in one accord. I like that. This is the first place. A little humor here. The first car that you see in the Bible is a Honda Accord, but they were in one accord. It must have been a big one. That's an oldie but a goodie. 1 Corinthians 10, 16, and 17 says, The cup of blessing which we bless, is it not the communion of the blood of Christ? The bread which we break, is it not the communion of the body of Christ? For we, being many, are one bread and one body, for we all are all partakers of that one bread, which is Christ. So we're speaking of that unity that they were in. 1 Corinthians 12.
For by one Spirit, as 12. For as the body is one, and hath many members, and all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit are we all baptized into one body, whether we be Jews or Gentiles, whether we be bond or free, and have been all made to drink into one Spirit.
Okay. A bunch there, and 20, but now there are many members, yet but one body. So, Feast of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit comes down, the church is empowered. This is not in the book, but I think it's important to say, if you do your maths, and we study through these feasts, each of them was linked to an event that had already happened. There is one feast that's not going to be linked to anything, and it's Pentecost. At the time that it was given, there is no other real feast that it was linked to. However, if you do the math, and you look at when they observed Passover, when that first fruits would have been, that first day of the week, when Christ, when he rose from the dead, and you start to count out 50 days, you get to Pentecost. If you go back to where they first observed Passover, they left that first day of the week, and then they headed over to Sinai. It's 50 days. So basically, as they set up camp at Sinai, he'll say, wait 3 days, and then meet me at the base of the hill. Boom, there's going to be long thunderings. It is going to be Pentecost that the Word of God is going to come down to the people. Not much is made of this. You don't see anything. It's interesting if there's only one feast that doesn't have something that's associated with. Yet there is something that's associated with it. So the Jews believe that is. Some will say it's a post-exilic tradition, but that they do today. A Jew will think Pentecost. That's when God gave the nation the law on Sinai, and it is called Pentecost, the Shavuot, if you look at the Hebrew literature. So you can do the maths, and you can do the days, or there's enough days there, and you're using a lunar calendar, and that'll get you from Exodus chapter 12, where we see the prescription for Passover, and then the book of Exodus chapter 19. When they arrive at Sinai, they'll say it was the third month, the first day of the third month. Okay. Just a little thing. The Feast of Trumpets. And so Leviticus 23 to 25. This is New Year's Day. I'm going to try to get through this. It's a special Sabbath in the 7th month, calling for a holy gathering. And it points to the future of Israel, this gathering together. Let's read. Someone want to take Isaiah 18. I guess we'll all kind of run there. Isaiah 18.
All ye inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the world, see ye, when he lifteth up an ensign on the mountains, and when he bloweth a trumpet, hear ye. For so the Lord said unto me, I will take my rest, and I will consider in my dwelling place, like a clear heat upon herbs, and like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest. For the harvest, when the bud is perfect, and the sour grape is ripening in the flower, he shall both cut off the sprigs with pruning hooks, and take away and cut down the branches. They shall be left together until the fowls of the mountains, and to the beasts of the earth, and the fowls shall summer upon them, and all the beasts of the earth shall winter upon them. In that time shall the present be brought unto the Lord of hosts, of all people scattered and peeled, and from a people terrible From their beginning hitherto, a nation meted out and trodden underfoot, whose land and rivers have spoiled, to the place of the name of the Lord of hosts, the Mount of Zion.
So, this is against New Year's Day, or Rosh Hashanah, is what they would say. If you've probably heard that term, maybe Rosh, which means head, Hashanah, the year, head of the year. A little bit of Hebrew there for us. And I'm going to let that one verse reading kind of cover that. We see a future application for that, a gathering in the Day of Atonement. Now, this was a big day for them. We might know it as Yom Kippur. Probably heard of the Yom Kippur War. But Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, we see it described in Leviticus 23, 26 to 32. I'm not going to read that. Someone's probably already turned into Hebrews. But it's the day that their sins were confessed, where intercession is made, and it followed immediately. Trumpets was, I want to say it was a solemn celebration, because it's moving ahead to this Day of Atonement. And certainly the Day of Atonement was a solemn, it was a day of rest, it was sacrifices, it was fasting. The priest made atonement for the people and for the tabernacle, and this is where the high priest would go in once a year into the Holy of Holies to make that offering, that atonement for the nation. And again, that Yom Kippur, Yom means day, Kippur is that Hebrew word which is basically of atonement. We actually get an English word, cover, out of it, that the blood would cover things to if I got my Hebrew right there. Day of Atonement, Hebrews 9, 11 through 14. I'm sorry, yes, that's right.
But Christ being come up on high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats and calves, for by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. For if the blood of bulls and of goats and the ashes of a heifer sprinkling the unclean sanctifieth to the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God.
So it looks to the New Testament fulfillment of that, and all the offerings it kept having to do them. And there's one perfect offering that will be the end of it. And then after that, they celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. Find that there. They're kind of like one right after another, as they're lined up there in the book of Leviticus. And this is for them as a completion of the harvest. It was a final religious convocation of the year. In the official calendar, there's other holidays that the Jews observe that have been added in. It's called Booths in the King James. It looked back at the Exodus from Egypt when they were going to when it's celebrated, they live in these little tabernacles, these little booths made out of things, but reminded of their dependence upon God. And he points us to Zechariah. Let's go to Zechariah 14:16.
It shall come to pass that every one that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And it shall be that whoso will not come And it shall be that whoso will not come up to all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, and have no rain, there shall be the plague, wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And this shall be the punishment of Egypt, and the punishment of the nations that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. In that day there shall be upon the bells of the horses holiness unto the Lord, and pots in the Lord's house shall be likened to the bowls before the altar.
So it's interesting. What's he talking about there? If you don't come up for tabernacles,
You're out.
they're going to be judged. It's a good place to introduce this. 3 of the feasts were pilgrimage feasts. Tabernacles was one of them originally, so it's not unusual that we see that tie. This is just another one of those little tie-ins. You need to come up for tabernacles. If you don't, you're really not part of the nation. The 3 pilgrimage feasts, Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles, all the nation gathered there in Jerusalem. If you were able to make the trip and you were, a proper Jew, you would go. I say that to when we go to the New Testament. When did Jesus do? We do see tabernacles likely when we do see him work in Jerusalem for tabernacles. But most importantly, we see Passover. In that Passover week, Christ offers himself basically to the nation. The nation reject him. They kill him as their Passover lamb, in effect. And then what's the next time the people are getting together after Passover? Pentecost. God didn't do this in secret. When he unfolded his plan of redemption, this is one of those wonderful insights as I'm reading the Bible and I'm seeing this. Wow, he didn't do it in secret. As best he could, he wove into the Old Testament sacrificial system and festival system that everybody gathers 3 times a year. It keeps the nation in communication. There's corporate worship, all the things that would happen that were good. But when it was go time, Christ was there for Passover. They killed him. The Holy Spirit came down on Pentecost, and then Tabernacles. Some see that'll be the ingathering, but we'll see. And we see that it will be symbolic of our kingdom rest. I think I have Matthew 17:4 in my class notes when I teach this. But there is this.
Matthew what, sorry?
Matthew 17:4. Get there. Matthew 17:4 says, Then he answered Peter and he said unto Jesus, Lord, is it good for us to be here? If thou wilt, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for thee, one for Moses, one for Elias. Well, that was the tabernacles like they would set up. He knew how to set those things up. But we do see the concept of that kingdom rest that's still ahead for the saints. And that's not the best proof verse for that. But the idea, and tabernacles was a very joyous time. It was a time of rest. It was a time of no work. It was a proper celebration. And I think I mentioned when did Hamas attack Israel?
The day after, wasn't it?
Right after that, the day after Sukkot is what that one is called. For what it's worth, this year it begins the 6th of October and ends the 13th of October. Just I'm not going to make a big deal out of this, but just the Jews have other holidays, certainly from the Old Testament, not in the law, but we have Purim, which comes from the book of Esther. They will celebrate the protection of Israel, or the non-destruction of Israel as well. And then, of course, Hanukkah, which is not even in our Bible, but from between the Testaments, God's provisions for protecting the nation as well there. And there's a handful of other ones. I'm not going to go into them, but there's a bunch of days. They have lots of festivals. But yeah, those 3, Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles.
But only the 3 were compulsory to go to.
Compulsory pilgrimage. Yeah. There are other ones, Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, trumpets, non-pilgrimage. Those other ones were. Let's see. All right. Continuing on, there's other festivals that are detailed in the book of Leviticus. We have basically rest for the land. 30 times we'll find a reference to the land in this section. Now, they're not in the land yet. They're on Sinai. The land is to the north. It was promised to Abraham, his descendants. The key is that every 7th year there's to be a rest, a Sabbath rest for the land. Leviticus 25:4. And a rest from toil. Let's go to Leviticus 25:4 and read that.
25:4.
Yep.
But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field, nor prune thy vineyard.
And verses you 5 and 6, while you're there.
Sure. That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vine undressed. For it is a year of rest unto the land. And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee, and for thy servant, and for thy maid, and for thy hired servant, and for thy stranger that sojourneth with thee.
So, bottom line is, let the land rest, folks. Don't work it, don't harvest it. Now, some stuff's going to still continue to grow. That should be sufficient. They knew how to store up grain, all those things. They would make provisions for that. One of the indictments against Israel when we get into the book of Chronicles and we get into the book of Kings is going to be they didn't give the land its rest. And we'll find from the time they occupied the land until that time, it's going to be 50 years that they did not give the land rest. Every 7 years, you're supposed to give it to them. They don't. And so God's going to give them the land the rest as well as judge them. He's going to kick them out. And they'll be kicked out the right amount of time. They're going to come right back in. It's 70 years. I think it's 70 years. But the land will get its Sabbath rest. Because there will be no people to harvest anything, basically. But that was one of the many indictments against them. They definitely wandered far from God. Okay. We see the year of Jubilee. It's liberty. That's when you release the indentured servants that were brethren. And so the year of liberty. And it was liberty to land as well as servants. If you sold some land, land was what we call leasehold or something. If you never really own the land, and these concepts are used around the world where the land stays in the family, you can borrow it for a while, and you pay for that that term of borrowing, but then it reverts back. That's because it was an ancestral land. They took that ownership very seriously, and so we'll see that there. See the law of the land when they go into the land. There's some additional things that will be up there, but the big thing is I like this conditional blessing. Leviticus 26, verses 1 through 13. Leviticus, towards the end. Okay. Leviticus 26, ye shall make no idols nor graven image, yet right place, neither rear you up a standing image, neither shall you set up any image of stone in your land or bow down unto it, for I am the Lord your God. When the Jews would make an altar, they wouldn't even carve the stones. They're supposed to be natural stones. You can't improve on God is sort of the idea there. So what's he tell them? You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. I am the Lord. And here's basically Israel. This is a conditional covenant, unlike the Abrahamic covenant, which was unilateral, unconditional. The Mosaic covenant is conditional and is bilateral. And here we go. If you walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and do them, then I will give you rain in due season, and the land shall yield her increase. The trees of the field shall yield their fruit. And your threshing floor shall reach unto the vintage, and the vintage shall reach unto the sowing time. Basically, you have enough, and ye shall eat your bread to the full, and dwell in your land safely. And I will give peace in the land, and ye shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid. Let's continue on. I'm going to skip down, because there's a second part to that. Verse 14, but if you will not hearken unto me, and will not do these commandments, and if ye shall despise my statutes, or if your soul abhor my judgments, so that ye will not do all my commandments, but that ye break my covenant, I will also do this unto you. I will even appoint over you terror, consumption, and the burning egg, or ague, however you pronounce that shall consume the eyes and cause sorrow of heart. And ye shall sow your seed in vain, and your enemies shall eat it. ... So the is there anything in there that says this is how you get saved or not get saved? So just for blatant clarity, there's nothing in the law that's about salvation. It's a conditional blessing of, or conditional covenant of, they're to be God's people that represent God in the world, and to be His priests, a nation of priests. But if you follow me, I'll bless you. If you go against me, I will curse you. And then ultimately, when you wander off and you turn your heart back to me, I'll bring you back. It is that. It's not even an if, it's when. I like that. In fact, he brings it out here. This is 26, 32. 32, how do you go from 32 to 29? I don't know how to do that. I guess, well, it's a continuation, right? Probably through chapter 29. But 36, 22, and I will bring the land into desolation, and enemies which dwell therein shall be astonished at it. And basically, it says, I'll give the land its rest, the Sabbath rest. We're going to see that play out. But when they turn their heart back to God, verse 44, and yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them to destroy them utterly, and to break my covenant with them. For I am the Lord their God, but I will, for their sakes, remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt, in the sight of the heathen, that I might be their God. I am their God. So basically, when they turn their hearts back to God, it is verse 40, I'm sorry. If they shall confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers with their trespasses, which they trespassed against me, and that also they have walked contrary unto me, ... Then verse 42, I will remember my covenant with Jacob. So really, it's the heart that matters. And so basically, it is predicted. It doesn't say if. That's sort of a picky point there. It's going to be when, and it's on both sides. It's if when you disobey, and then when you turn your heart back to me. Galatians 6 and 7. Let's tie this all together to the New Testament. I hope I kind of made that point. We're going to see that as we go into Kings and Chronicles, because that's where it's going to play out. Acts, Romans, Galatians, after 2 Corinthians. If someone is there, you're probably already waiting on it.
Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whosoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap.
So, there you go. And so it's, God will not be mocked. God will give them time to respond. He'll give them time to turn back to Him. But He will judge them. But He will bring them back when their hearts turn back to Him. Getting ahead on that a little bit. Okay. Turning the page. The land, all resources belong to God, chapter 27. And here we see the voluntary consecrations and tithings, not obligatory, as most of the Leviticus, but an expression of love toward God. There were these free will offerings to God, and we'll see some of that in there as you read it. Okay. Pardon me. So, what is the central theme, or what is the theme or central truth of Leviticus? Just a quick revision here.
Keep the law.
What's that?
Keep the law.
Keep the law?
Yeah, and
Holiness?
yeah, and how the priests should act. But ultimately, it's about they need to keep the agreements with God, and He will show them grace.
Holy people need to have holy living. I see here we call it the Book of Atonement. Here's the theme, I guess, right here, Leviticus. Life of the nation, laws are prescribed. I'm looking for that cute little one-word summary. It doesn't have, okay, the theme of Leviticus is fellowship. On the top of page 27. So that's probably what he's looking for, fellowship. But if we're going to have fellowship with God, we have to approach God. We have to cleanse ourselves to approach God. And the whole sacrificial system, when you look into what the priest had to do, then you get to it as you read through it. They had to bathe, make offerings, and then they could approach. Can you explain what atonement means in Leviticus? And what does it mean for you?
It's confessing your sins, isn't it?
Making, yeah, whatever it is, the righteous payment for our sins, and making it right, I guess, is kind of the idea there. But that word is actually the Hebrew word kofar, which has the idea of to cover, and it covers our sins as we approach God. So what does it mean for us? Well, Christ is our atonement. And for us, His blood cleanses us from all unrighteousness, we see in the New Testament. What does Pentecost mean, the word itself?
Is it 50 days or something?
Was that?
50 days.
50, yep. 50th. Ooh, can you name 5 of the offerings of Leviticus 22?
Meat.
Free will, peace,
Guilt.
Meat would be so that's in there, yep.
Burnt.
And then the tough one, what's that?
Burnt.
Well, the burnt would be, the burnt,
sacrifice.
which can be a voluntary free will offering.
Okay.
But yeah. And then there's those are kind of the good side. So you have the free will, the burnt, the meal, and then
Sacrifice of
the peace offering is what you said.
Yeah.
And then you go over on the other side, you have the sin offering and the trespass offering. And he divided them up. The first 3 are kind of like a sweet savor, voluntary, and then the final 2 are non-sweet, compulsory. Your assignment for next week? Well, read. You're probably, I don't know if how are you doing with the reading? Are you keeping up? There's probably a lot of reading, but just keep working through it as you do catch up to it. It'll make sense.
Go as far as Deuteronomy 23.
What's that?
Go as far as Deuteronomy 23.
Okay. Good. Good on you. So again, yeah, just the 2 feasts. We talked about them, Purim and Hanukkah. And there are others that the Jews have added in modern times. There are summaries of the feast, and you'll get through that. Okay. Book of Numbers. Quick set. So, I like his point here as a reminder, though. Remember, this course is through the Bible in a year. Be tempted to stop and study a subject and lose sight of the objective, bottom of page, middle of page 32. The objective is to let the big, broad meaning of each book get a hold of you so that you remember the overall message of each book. It'll keep you focused, keep you bounded. Keep these guys coming. So, the book of Numbers, we get its name in English from the Greek arithmai, where we get arithmetic from. In Latin, it's numeri, which is the same word. And in English, we call it numbers. And because the children of Israel will be numbered twice, one at the beginning and once at the end, and we'll find out a little bit about that. Why the Hebrew name was Bamidbar, in the wilderness. And the Hebrew name usually comes from the first verse, and it says, "And the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness." In Bamidbar. Midbar is wilderness. Midbar is wilderness. Ba means in Bamidbar. I like he says as we put together numbers in wilderness, that's kind of the story. We're going to number them at the beginning and the end. Why? Because in the wilderness, everyone that rebels against God and will not take over the land, when they go to take the land, is going to be gone. And God's going to show, look, I took care of them. I think there's just kind of that sense that.
Is that the 600,000?
600,000.
And then the 600,000. Yeah.
600,000 fighting men.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
they're going to have problems. We're going to get into their problems a little bit. And that's why they'll be numbered at the beginning and the end. So Exodus takes off. I like this. If you go to the book of Exodus, chapter 40, verse 17, and keep your hand in, if you're in Leviticus or Numbers, keep it there. So we get these little time marks. Don't miss these as you're going through this. This is like further study. But Exodus 40 in verse 17 gives us this little time mark, and it says, "And it came to pass in the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up. When did they start? On the first day of the first year, they basically started the countdown to Passover. It's going to be the 14th day of that first month that they celebrate Passover. But here we are, we're in that second year. They made it to Sinai, they built the tabernacle, and they're going to dedicate the tabernacle on the, what does it say now? The first month in the second year. Now we go to Leviticus, Numbers. So between that time and where Numbers picks up in verse 1, it says, and the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tabernacle of the congregation on the first day of the second month in the second year after they were come out of the land of Egypt. So Leviticus basically is 1 month at the foot of Mount Sinai. And then we'll get into Numbers. And the Numbers will be this in the wilderness of wandering. I kind of like that. If you want time scale, it's good to kind of keep it focused. They will take the census. The people will be organized. They didn't have walkie-talkies, so they're going to use horns. And so if you want to go a particular way, it's one particular horn call. If you want to go the other way, trouble's coming from a particular way. They had a great system set up. They'll march. They begin the march to Canaan. That God is leading. We're going to see this pillar of fire again. It's going to continue by day, and the pillar of cloud by day, pillar of fire by night. And when it picked up, they picked up. Very shortly, Canaan will be in sight. Israel will disbelieve and they'll rebel. God's going to send his judgment. And then 40 years will be the payback. 1 year for each day the spies were in the land scoping it out. Basically, the entire old generation is going to die. When the last one is dead, it's time to do another census, and they'll count going into the land. They're going to be basically encamped across the Jordan River from, the city of Palms. What's the first big city coming over the river?
Jericho? No.
Jericho, yes. They're right across from Jericho, ready to come into the land, and that's where we will end the book of Numbers. Ready to go in to the land of Canaan, but that will be the book of Joshua. So its importance, we see it in the New Testament again and again. We'll take a look at 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 12. I think it's better at my
1
Bible flipping
Corinthians
here.
10, 1 through 12?
Yes.
Okay. Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant, how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink. For they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. But with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things were our examples, to the intent we should not lust after evil things, as they also lusted. Neither be ye idolaters, as were some of them. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink, and rose up to play. Neither let us commit fornication, as some of them committed, and fell in one day 23,000. Am I going on? Yes.
Yep.
Neither let them tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted, and were destroyed of serpents. Neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured, and were destroyed of the destroyer. Now all these things happened unto them for samples, and they were written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Wherefore, let him that thinketh he standeth take heed, lest he fall.
So that is really, you may not get all the allusions there, but it's a great synopsis of their wanderings, and I like that. They were a nation-side example of how not to do something, which is kind of a terrible thing. You ever see these posters? They have the motivational posters, and one of them is of a ship sinking. We call it actually demotivational posters. They're a little sarcastic. And on the sinking ship, the note is basically, your life may only serve as a warning to others. You know, as you remember, I forgot what the little title for that one was, but that's Israel. They're going to be an example of how not to do things. In fact, the big theme of Numbers, it's better to be mute than to murmur. And we saw that murmuring was one of the things. They just need to kind of zip it and go with what God had for them, and they get themselves in a lot of trouble. So we'll get to that. So Hebrews chapter 3, verse 7 through 19. Wow, getting a lot of reading in. Wherefore, as the Holy Ghost saith, today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts, as in the provocation, in the day of temptation, in the wilderness. Well, it could be their first big temptation. When your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years, wherefore I was grieved with that generation, and said, they do always err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. So I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest. Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God, but exhort one another daily, while it's called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. For we are made partakers of Christ, if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. While it is said, today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts, as in the provocation. For some, when they had heard, did provoke, albeit not all that came out of Egypt by Moses. So not all did, but 2 didn't. But with whom was he grieved 40 years? Was it not with them that had sinned, whose carcasses fell in the wilderness? Keep going. And to whom sware he that they should not enter into his rest, but them that believe not? So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. And our challenge there is, as believers, keep believing God, following God. Our faith comes through that. Continue on. So what are we going to see? There's 2 pieces of this, or what he sees a threefold piece break out of it. It is the movement of people, and we'll look at 2 generations. There's the generation that came out of Egypt. There's going to be the generation that goes into the land. So chapters 1 through 14 will be basically a description of the old generation. When we get to chapter 15 through 20, we'll see the wanderings, and then the new generation will emerge in chapters 21 through 36. So we have these pairs. We have 2 generations, 2 numberings, 2 journeys, and 2 instructions. And certainly as we get to the end, there's going to be new instructions for the people going into the land. And in fact, that will be completed in the book of Deuteronomy, which will be for the nation that will be going into to take the land. What is the central message of Numbers? Let's go to Numbers chapter 9, verse 15. To 23. And it says, and on that day that the tabernacle was reared up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, namely the tent of the testimony, and at even there was upon the tabernacle, as it were, the appearance of fire until the morning. So it was always the cloud covered it by day, and the appearance of fire by night. And when the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, then after that the children of Israel journeyed. And in the place where the cloud abode, there the children of Israel pitched their tents. Keep going to 23. At the commandment of the Lord, the children of Israel journeyed. And at the commandment of the Lord, they pitched. As long as the cloud abode upon the tabernacle, they rested in their tents. When the cloud tarried long upon the tabernacle many days, then the children of Israel kept the charge of the Lord and journeyed not. And so it was when the cloud was a few days upon the tabernacles. According to the commandment of the Lord, they abode in their tents, and according to the commandment of the Lord, they journeyed. And so it was when the cloud abode from even until the morning, and that the cloud was taken up in the morning, then they journeyed, whether it was by day or by night. That the cloud was taken up, they journeyed. You got to continue a couple more verses, right? Verse 23, coming up to it. Or whether it were 2 days, or a month, or a year, that the cloud tarried upon the tabernacle, remaining thereon, the children of Israel abode in their tents, and journeyed not. But when it was taken up, they journeyed. At the commandment of the Lord, they rested in their tents, And at the commandment of the Lord they journeyed. They kept the charge of the Lord at the commandment of the Lord by the hand of Moses. So what a powerful thing. You see, the presence of the Lord is there. And there's really no excuse for them as we go into it. So the overall, their leadership is going to be God. And at this point in time, we'd say Israel was a theocracy, that God was their ruler. And he points us to John chapter 14:6 and 8:12, excuse me. Someone take over for me. My voice is starting to wear out here. Somebody got it?
Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And it's 8:12, yeah?
So we would say, yes,
Yeah.
we're to follow him as the way.
Wait, also John 8:12.
Yeah.
Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life.
I never really looked at that before, but when you think about the wilderness, he's probably making an allusion to that as he led the people in the wilderness. And that's the light was there to follow at night. He was that interesting. Okay.
Just to stop my confusion, if the cloud was down, they stopped. The cloud wasn't there, they walked.
Or the cloud would pick up and start moving, yeah.
The light, the fire, was when they moved.
Light, it's just day and night. It's just cloud is day, fire night. So cloud, whenever it was officially dark, probably like switching on a light. It became a light. So a message of guidance, a message of deliverance. Numbers 10:29. I should have closed my Bible.
(10:29).
Yep.
And Moses said unto Hobab, the son of Raguel, the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law, we are journeying unto the place of which the Lord said, I will give it you. Come thou with us, and we will do thee good, for the Lord hath spoken good concerning Israel.
Okay, and 21, I'm not sure, I guess he's inviting him to come along. In Numbers 21, 6-9. But there is that confidence that they're going to go into the land, and there was good at the end of this journey.
And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against thee. Pray unto the Lord, that he take away the serpents from us. And Moses prayed for the people. And the Lord said unto Moses, Make thee a fiery serpent, and set it upon a pole. And it shall come to pass, that every one that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live. And Moses made a serpent of brass, and put it upon a pole. And it came to pass, that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived.
So this will go to John chapter 3, which says, even as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Pointing right back to this. And what was the answer? Look and live. So if you observe, and you would look at Christ in the sense of following him, putting your faith in him, in John chapter 3 there, because Jesus is going to give us a recipe. He's going to say, for whosoever believeth in, me. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. But this is an example, this is typology. We talked about typology, didn't we? The brazen serpent, as kind of odd as it sounds, is a type of Christ. And the answer is simple in God's economy, is to have the humility for them. I think it's acknowledging their sin and turning to God, turning back to God. And we need to acknowledge our sin and turn to God, turn to Christ. One of those big aha moments. Well, let's keep going here. So, deliverance is going to be from their sin. So the old generation, numbers 1 through 14, they're at Sinai. Once they get going, I should have brought a map in. Maybe next time I'll bring in a map. They're going to march kind of north up to Kadesh Barnea. It was an oasis kind of in the middle of the wilderness there, south of the kind of the center between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean. And we'll see in chapter 1, they'll number the adult males, and we will get a number. So number chapter 1, let me just kind of thumb along as we're doing this. And I have not highlighted, this is all highlighted on my computer, but they will number and they will come up with the conclusion there, 600,000, so many, where is that? Verse 46, and they that were numbered were 600,000, 3,000, and 550. They didn't name the Levites, they're not to go to war. And that's that. So the number of the adult males, and again, fighting age, they will basically, God is a God of order, is kind of what comes out of the first chapters here. They just don't all pick up and go. There's going to be a marching order. There will be an order. So by the tribes, they will march in a certain way. They will camp in a certain way. They all know where they had to end up. When the clouds stopped, they knew where each would camp out. They will number the Levites. Now, at this point in chapter 3, the males, they're going to be the priests. And amongst the Levites in chapter 4, let's read his little thing here. The numbering was for military purposes. Each of the 12 tribes was numbered and assigned a position around the tabernacle. Again, they would fight, they would protect it. The tabernacle would be at the center of there's like a square. And when you look at the square, the closest ones would be the Levites. And they would each have a side around that. They each, the various tribes will be given different jobs. Some would carry all the utensils. Some would carry the tent. Some would carry the Ark of the Covenant and the other fixtures. So they all had their assignment. It was time to pick up to go. They knew. It's like, well, what do we do this time? You know what you're doing this time. It's what you did last time. You train like you play, and you play like you train. So they would train, and they all had their assignments for doing this. So when it was time to go, they knew it would be an orderly thing. So chapter 3, we'll see the census of the tribe of Levi. They were exempt from that general census. They were the priests. They were set apart, even amongst the nation of priests, to serve God and care for their tabernacle. And chapter 3, verse 38, we'll see the position of Moses, Aaron, and his sons. Aaron will be the high priest, and his sons will be those priests under him. Actually, it'd be the high priest that would follow on. Those that did get killed. All right, well, the instructing, chapters 5 through 10, we'll see first chapters deal with the inward condition of the camp, though. These 5 chapters deal with the inward condition of the camp. What is that first? These 5 chapters deal with the inward condition of the camp, yep. So purity, laws, honesty, and truth. Let's just scan chapter 5 here real quick. What do we have in chapter 5? This really is going to be a verse by verse. I just want to get a better feel. What are they getting into?
Cast the lepers out.
What's that now?
Cast the lepers out.
Cast the lepers out.
Outside of the camps.
Yep.
Don't infect.
For a time.
Yep.
And we have just kind of people treating each other according to the law. If you have sins, you have to deal with the sins. Spirit of jealousy, wow, all these things. Oh yeah, the man bring his wife into the priest shall bring, oh boy, all these things. I'm not going to read all that. So we have, they just say deal with, no verse 3. Verse 3 was what? There you go, we talked about that if they have leprosy. The vow of the Nazarites, these are that would separate themselves unto the Lord. They don't give you a lot of details as to why they would do that. That was a personal thing. But there's things they could and couldn't do. And as you read and understand that, I don't think we're really meant to read the entire chapter here in this venue. But read that and see what the Nazarites have to do. Chapter 7, we'll see the free...
What are Nazarites, I suppose? Are they part of the Levites?
It can be anybody. It's a Nazarite vow. And so...
It's not a tribe as such.
Not a tribe, it's a vow that you've taken upon. And as a Nazarite, that there's things you will not do while you dedicated yourself to the Lord for some period of time.
A voluntary.
Let's take a quick peek here, chapter 6. Yeah, it is voluntary. Like Samson he'll have the Nazarite vow in him. Speak to the children of Israel, verse 2, and say unto them, when either a man or woman shall separate themselves to vow a vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves unto the Lord. It could be, I'd have to look up examples of that, but it could be service, it could be seeking His will. And then what will they do? They'll abstain from things that will potentially violate themselves. They'll separate themselves from wine and strong drink. Ooh.
No shaving.
No shaving. Yep. Well, what's that? When Paul comes back, when we read about Paul at the end of the book of Acts there, he says, there's a couple of guys that are just finishing your vows. Why don't you pay for them to basically get cleaned up and then help them with their offerings at the temple? That would have been shaving and getting all tidy again because they had not been cutting their hair or shaving their head, shaving their face. So it's not so much the what, but the how. And so there is a process by which they would do this. Now this is not to confuse anything with Christ, but it is supposed to be, it will be the vow of Samson. You can see how Samson blows it in a lot of these things with the grape juice and women and all those other things that he shouldn't have been defiling himself. And we'll let that go. So chapter 7 will be the free will offering of the leaders of each tribe. And they'll record each offering. What I find interesting here is it says, see Mark 12, 41 to 44. What happened to Mark 12, 41 to 44? My Bible just happened to turn there. Thank you, Lord. And it says, Jesus said over against the treasury, behold how the people cast money into the treasury, and many that were rich cast in much. And there came a certain poor widow. So why are we doing the widow's mite there? Well, the Lord knows.
It's a free will offering.
It's a free will offering. What's interesting, when you read the offering, they all bring the same thing for each of the tribes. And this is a Dave Campbell opinion. When we see offerings brought, it is tend to be like the same thing repeated. We'll see this a couple of times here. That's what I think when the wise men, not the three wise men, but the wise men came to Jesus, I think each of them brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. He had presented it to them, some quantity. Why would one guy get the gold and one guy get the frankincense and one guy get the myrrh? I think these were symbolic gifts, whether we do pour into them the significance that a lot of modern scholars say that gold is for a king, frankincense is what the aromas of life, and then myrrh is for your death. That I think, personal opinion, you can't pound the pulpit on this one, but each of them presented each of those things. Because when you see the offering here, everybody brings the same thing. It's actually boring reading, because it's going to be, and for the tribe of Benjamin, blah, 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 blah. And it's all the same thing.
How many bullocks, how many sheep, how many kids?
Yep. Consecration of the Levites for their duties, chapter 8. Chapter 9, guess what? It's been, what did they say at the very beginning of the book? It's the first day of the second year. What's coming up in 2 weeks? Passover. Passover is like normally the 14th of the month. Look what happens. Chapter 8, chapter 9. The people kept the Passover, and then they marched. So another one of those these little time hacks where we're getting the flow of what's happening. And again, we'll see after they do that the pillar of cloud by day, here you go, Len, and the pillar of fire by night. And it shows that visible presence of the Lord, that guidance of the Lord. And he wants to remind us that Passover was a memorial of past deliverance. They were to be reminded of that. And certainly as good, very timely for this week, as we observe Lord's Supper, it's a memorial for us as a reminder of our deliverance from sin through Christ, but even more so that he's coming back again. And that as he paid the price for our sins, he's given us a job to do until he comes back again. And let's read 1 Corinthians 11:26. I'll probably be reading that on Sunday. 1 Corinthians 11:26, or maybe I'll make a point of it now that I mentioned it.
But as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show the Lord's death till he come.
So that is the significance. Yes, it's a memorial to look back to our debt of sin being paid, but he's coming. He's come and go. And so I think that's a good place to stop for the day. But probably we'll spend a little more time on a few of these things, but now we're getting ready to march. And what should
started marching tonight.
What's that?
So we certainly started marching tonight.
Yeah. And as we march, see, we'll wrap this up like early next time. We'll tap on a few of the big events here, but we're going to kill. Next week's going to be a big week. We're going to kill 600,000 people. In just a little reading.
It doesn't sound much when you say it quickly, does it?
What's that?
It doesn't sound much when you say it quickly.
600,000? No. How many is that a day for 40 years? It's a lot. A lot of funerals to go to.
Come on, Miss Maths.
Years.
What's that?
I said, come on, Miss Maths.
Oh.
600,000 by 40 years.
Oh.
Divide by 40, divide by 365. You got it there? He's pushing numbers.
got it.
41. 41.0958.
So 42 funerals a day.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Of course, as we'll see, some days are bigger than other days. And in fact, they'll start when it starts. So they don't even say how many, but as they go to attempt to go into the land on their own power, they get discomfited, which I think they lost a whole bunch up front. But
Sorry, I got stuck on the Lord's Supper thing being it says, I just didn't realize this. The Passover is a memorial of past deliverance. The Lord's Supper is a memorial of our deliverance through Christ. I mean, yeah.
Never seen that before. Okay.
It's just
That's why you instituted it on Passover.
I know, but it's
The
cool.
fulfillment. Yes, it is cool. And that's why we look at the feast, the big feasts. We look at Passover fulfilled. We look at Pentecost fulfilled and changed. And now we're like, that big one, the other big one, Tabernacles,
Yeah.
rest. It will be fulfilled. And that will be, we're up, we're out of here. Those that are here, there will be tribulation saints. But at the end of all that, there will be the ultimate rest. So it will be after 1,000 years, and then there will be a new heaven and a new earth. And then the rest, the proper rest. Well, that 1,000 years is going to be pretty good. Satan will be bound up for 1,000 years and give one last little chance, and it won't last long. Okay, well, be in prayer for Israel. We're waiting for the peace treaty to be signed, the big one. I don't think this is going to be it, but I think where you just kind of see the world kind of shaping and moving for treaties, and we'll see what happens. Prayerfully, we don't have to put boots on the ground and start World War III with the Russians.
Still an awful lot to cover for those of us who get bogged down in things.
That's what he says. Keep the big picture, and as you read, you'll see. But it is because when you read through Numbers, it's going to be just a few a few short chapters and 40 years has gone by. It's like, whoa, how did that happen? Well, it is. And then Leviticus will be like a 2-week period. Now, not Leviticus, Deuteronomy will be about a 2-week period. And we'll go into Joshua. But you got Genesis, which is creation, from creation to going into Egypt, thousands of years. You got Exodus, not all that long, a couple weeks. Well, you do start from the rows of Pharaoh that knew not Moses, but 40 years, 80 years, till he's called to be who he is. So an 80-year period-ish. And then we got 40 more in the wilderness.
So the spies went on their trip for 40 days?
40 days.
It's amazing.
A good long looky-loo, look-see. And then, he holds them accountable. They get to see. And yeah, there's big guys in land. It's really, if you're to read one thing, read the account of the spies and going up to them trying to go in to take the land. Because it's amazing. I mean, nation wants to go back into Egypt. They're willing to kill Moses. They're willing to stone him. Have the first rock festival. You can probably make a joke out of that, which I really would want to. It turned on a dime. And then the ultimate irony, the big irony, I'm not sure this guy really hits on it. The people are saying, you brought us out here to kill our little babies and our women, or our wives. Why did you bring us out here to kill our babies and our wives? And God's going to see, basically he's going to say, your babies and your wives are going to be fine, but you're not going to make it. Yeah, it's you need to be worrying about. And he'll keep that. So, okay.